I came home to a house that still smelled like my cooking, and I found a receipt for a hotel I had never been to. It was dated the same night my husband told me he was working late. The amount was $240, and under the room charge there was a spa add-on. He had ordered champagne. I sat on the kitchen floor with that receipt in my hand for almost an hour. I did not cry. I did not call him. I just sat there thinking about every single time he had come home late in the last 2 years, and the number I counted got so high that I stopped counting. That was the first night I understood that everything I thought my life was had been a carefully arranged lie. Not a mistake, not a moment of weakness. A system, a routine, a second life that had been running right next to mine the whole time. And what made it worse, what made it unbearable, was that I had been paying for it, not just emotionally. Literally, with my own savings. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. If you found out that someone you trusted completely had not only betrayed you but had been using your money to do it, what would you do first? Would you confront them immediately? Would you leave quietly? Or would you wait, watch, and build something they could never take from you? Tell me in the comments. Because the choice Emma made in that moment is exactly what made the difference between surviving this story and winning it. My name is Emma. I am 36 years old. I grew up in a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone and quiet loyalty is considered the highest form of love. I was taught to give people the benefit of the doubt. I was taught that if you loved someone enough and stayed patient enough, things would work out. I believed that for a very long time. I believed it even when the evidence started saying otherwise. I met Daniel when I was 24. He was charming in that effortless way that certain men carry, the kind of charm that makes you feel like you are the only person in the room. He was funny and confident, and he had a way of making ordinary moments feel important. When he told me he wanted to build a life with me, I believed every word of it. We got married when I was 26. Our early years were good. Not perfect, but genuinely good. We had a small apartment and big plans. Daniel was in sales and I worked in financial compliance, which is a fancy way of saying I spent my days reviewing documents to make sure nobody was hiding money where it did not belong. The irony of that job, given everything that came later, is not lost on me. About 4 years into our marriage, I inherited a little over $60,000 from my grandmother. She had lived simply her whole life and quietly saved everything. Before she passed, she told me that money was for my security. She held my hand and said, "Emma, this is for you, not for dreams that belong to someone else." "For you," I nodded, "I promised." I thought I understood what she meant. I did not understand yet what she was protecting me from. Daniel knew about the inheritance. He also knew that I had kept it in a separate account in my name only, which had been my grandmother's quiet instruction. For a while that arrangement was fine. We did not fight about it. He had his income, I had mine, and we shared household expenses from a joint account. It felt fair. Then things started to shift. It was not sudden. It was the way a wall cracks slowly, almost invisibly, and then one day you look and there is a fracture you cannot explain but also cannot ignore. He started working later. At first it was once or twice a week. Then it was almost every weeknight. He would come home tired and distant, eat whatever I had left for him and go to his phone. When I asked how his day was, the answers got shorter. When I touched his shoulder, his body would tighten just slightly before he relaxed. I noticed. I always noticed. But I told myself I was reading too much into things. I told myself he was stressed at work. I told myself that all marriages go through quiet seasons and this was ours. I made excuses for 2 full years. It was a Wednesday in November when I found the receipt. I had pulled his jacket out of the closet to check the dry cleaning tags and the paper fell out of his inner pocket. A hotel receipt. $240. A Tuesday night. A spa add-on. Champagne. I sat on the kitchen floor for almost an hour. Then I got up, folded the receipt carefully, and put it inside my grandmother's old jewelry box in the back of my closet. I did not say a word to Daniel that night. I made dinner. I watched television. I went to bed. And while he slept beside me, I lay in the dark and I thought very carefully about what kind of woman I wanted to be in the next chapter of my life. I decided I did not want to be the woman who screamed and was dismissed. I did not want to be the woman who confronted without proof and gave someone the chance to lie smoothly. I worked in financial compliance. I knew how to follow a paper trail, and I had a very strong feeling that what I had found was not the beginning of something. It was the surface of something that had been going on for a long time, so I waited, and I watched. The next week I started paying closer attention, not in a desperate or obsessive way, in a systematic way. When his phone was face down on the counter, I noticed how quickly he moved to pick it up when a message came in. When he said he was going to a work dinner, I checked the joint account and saw he had taken out cash that morning, a thing he almost never did. When he came home from that dinner smelling faintly of a perfume that was not mine, I noted the date. I kept a small notebook, just facts, dates, times, amounts withdrawn, inconsistencies between what he said and what the account showed. I kept it in my car, in the pocket behind the passenger seat where he never looked. After 3 weeks of careful observation, the pattern was undeniable. He was seeing someone. He had been seeing someone for a long time. And the cash withdrawals, anywhere from $100 to $300 at a time, 2 or 3 times a month, told me that our joint account had been quietly funding this. I also noticed something that made my stomach drop in a completely different way. 2 transfers had been initiated from the joint account to an account I did not recognize. Small amounts at first, $150, $200, the kind of amounts that look like online purchases until you realize there is no corresponding bill, no delivery, no service, just money leaving. I did not panic. I printed the statements. I put them in my car with the notebook. And then I called my cousin Diane, who is one of the sharpest women I know and who also happened to have gone through a difficult divorce 2 years earlier. Diane picked up on the second ring. When I explained what I had found, there was a long pause. Then she said, "Emma, before you do anything else, you need to call a lawyer. Not a therapist. Not your mother, a lawyer." First, I called a lawyer the next morning. Her name was Patricia Wren and she had 17 years of family law experience. I sat in her office and I laid out everything I had, the receipt, the notebook, the printed bank statements, the 2 unexplained transfers. She went quiet as she read through everything. Then she looked up at me and said, "You have more than most people come in with. This is a good start." She told me a few things that changed how I thought about my situation. First, any transfers from a joint account made for non-marital purposes, meaning to fund an affair, could be considered dissipation of marital assets, which would be relevant in a divorce proceeding. Second, she advised me not to move any money yet or close any accounts, because that could signal to Daniel that I knew. Third, she told me to keep documenting. I left her office feeling something I had not felt in months. Not happiness. Something quieter than that. Clarity. I kept documenting. 2 more weeks passed, and then something happened that I had not expected. I got a message on a Tuesday afternoon from a number I did not recognize. It said simply, "My name is Marcus. I think our spouses know each other. I need to speak with you." I stared at the message for a long time. My first instinct was that it was some kind of trap, or that Daniel had somehow found out what I was doing and was trying to get ahead of it. But something about the wording, the careful formality of it, made me feel like this was someone who was also sitting in the dark trying to figure out what was real. I wrote back, "How did you get this number?" He replied, "I found your name in a message on my wife's phone. I am sorry for contacting you this way. I did not know how else to reach you." My heart was beating very fast. I asked him what his wife's name was. He said, "Serena." I did not know a Serena, but I typed the name into the note in my phone and I sat with it. We agreed to meet in person, a coffee shop on the other side of town, not anywhere near where either of us lived. Marcus turned out to be a tall, quiet man in his early 40s with the kind of exhausted eyes that told you he had also been awake at 3 in the morning doing math in his head that did not add up. He told me his story. He and Serena had been married for 9 years. About 18 months ago, she had started acting differently. He had found hotel booking emails deleted from a shared tablet. He had noticed cash being taken from their account. And 3 days before he messaged me, he had found a photograph on her phone, not of the 2 of them, but of Serena and a man Marcus did not recognize, standing in a rooftop restaurant with the kind of easy intimacy that does not happen between strangers. He had used a reverse image search on the restaurant and narrowed down the location. Then he had hacked his wife's text messages and found a contact saved only as a nickname. In a thread of messages he was not supposed to see, he had found my name mentioned in passing, Daniel's wife Emma. She doesn't know, she's too trusting, and he had found my number because I was apparently listed in his wife's phone under a note that read Daniel's wife, "Do not call." When Marcus said those words, "She doesn't know, she's too trusting," I felt something cold move through me. Not just the betrayal of what Daniel had done, but the knowledge that they had discussed me, that my obliviousness had been a topic of conversation between them, that my trust, which I had given carefully and genuinely, had been treated like a convenience. I excused myself and went to the bathroom and stood over the sink for a minute. Then I came back to the table and I told Marcus everything I had found. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I think we both need to understand the full picture before we do anything. He told me that he was a real estate attorney and that he had been building his own documentation for 2 months. He told me he had spoken to a forensic accountant who specialized in hidden asset cases. And then he said the thing that changed the temperature of the entire conversation. He said, Emma, I want you to understand something. I own a copy of everything. He meant digital copies. Backed up and time-stamped records of every suspicious transaction, every deleted message he had recovered, every hotel booking that matched dates Daniel had told me he was working late. He had organized it into folders on an encrypted drive. He had already shared a copy with his lawyer. I asked him why he was telling me this. He said, because you deserve to know what was done to you. Because I think when both of us are ready, the truth coming from two directions at once is harder to deny than truth coming from one. I drove home slowly that afternoon. My hands were steady on the wheel. I was not angry, which surprised me. I was not sad either. I felt something that took me a few days to name. I felt awake. Like someone had finally turned the lights on in a room I had been stumbling around in for years. I called Patricia Wren that evening. I told her about Marcus. She was quiet for a moment, then she said, that is a significant development. She told me to let her speak with Marcus's attorney and to continue doing exactly what I had been doing, documenting, not confronting, and not moving any assets. Over the next 2 weeks, the picture got fuller and darker. Marcus's forensic accountant found something that Patricia's preliminary review had not yet caught. Some of the cash withdrawals from Daniel's account, and some from Serena's, had been funneling into a shared account neither of their spouses was on. It appeared to have been used for travel, dining, gifts, and hotel stays. Based on the 2 years of records Marcus had compiled, the combined total was close to $40,000. $40,000 that had come, in part, from money that belonged to both of our households. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what Marcus found when he cross-referenced some of the larger transactions. 3 of them, each around $2,000, had come from a payment that matched the timing of transfers I had noticed from my joint account to that unrecognized account number. The unrecognized account. That had been a stepping stone. Daniel had been pulling small amounts from our joint account, moving them to a buffer account, and then on to the shared account he held with Serena. He had not just been cheating on me emotionally. He had been financially siphoning our household money to fund a relationship he was hiding from both of us. I printed everything Marcus's accountant found. I added it to the folder in my car. And then I did something I had been preparing myself to do for weeks. I called my mother. My mother is not a dramatic woman. She is steady and practical, and she has seen enough of the world to know that a person's character shows most clearly in how they behave when they believe they are not being watched. When I told her what I had found, she did not gasp or cry. She went quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How are you holding up, Emma?" I told her I was okay. And I meant it. She said, "What do you need from me?" I told her I might need to stay with her for a short period while things were being sorted. She said, "Your room is always your room. Come whenever you are ready." She did not ask questions. She did not tell me what to do. She just held the door open. That kind of love is quiet and it is enormous, and I will never take it for granted. By this point, I had been collecting evidence for almost 6 weeks. I had a lawyer, a documented paper trail, a corroborating witness in Marcus, forensic accounting records, and a plan. I had not said a single word to Daniel. He, meanwhile, had no idea anything had changed. He sighed. LL came home late and expected dinner. He still picked up his phone quickly when messages arrived. He still told me things that were not true with the calm, easy confidence of someone who believed completely that the person across from them was not paying attention. But here is the thing about people who lie smoothly for a long time. They start to believe their own version of reality. They stop thinking the other person could ever surprise them. And that overconfidence is where they make mistakes. Daniel's mistake came on a Thursday. He came home and told me he needed to access the joint account to cover a work expense. He said the amount was around $3,000 and that he would reimburse it by the end of the month. He said it casually, like someone asking to borrow a pen. I looked at him for a moment. Then I said, of course, "Let me check the balance first." I went to my laptop and pulled up the account. He stood in the kitchen behind me. I looked at the current balance, which I already knew to the dollar. I looked at the transaction history, which I already had printed. And then I said very calmly, "It looks like there have been a few unusual transactions lately." Can you help me understand this one from 3 weeks ago? I pointed to the screen. The transfer. The one I had traced. His face changed. It was not a dramatic change. He did not go pale or stumble. But there was a fraction of a second where his expression did something it had never done in front of me before. It cracked, just slightly, like the surface of ice when the temperature shifts. He said, "That was a bill I paid. I forgot to tell you." I said, "Which bill?" He said it was for a car maintenance thing he had handled separately. I said, "The account it transferred to." I looked it up. It is not a registered business or service vendor. It is a personal account. He said he would look into it. I nodded. I closed the laptop. I made tea, and I said nothing else for the rest of the evening. That night I called Patricia and told her what had happened. She said, "He knows you are aware of something. He may start moving faster. We need to move too." Patricia filed for divorce the following Monday. Daniel came home that evening to find the papers on the kitchen counter. I was sitting in the living room with a cup of tea. I was calm. I had been preparing for this moment for weeks, and I had decided that I would not raise my voice, I would not cry, and I would not explain myself more than once. He picked up the papers. He stood there for a moment. Then he looked at me and said, "What is this?" I said, "I think it is clear what it is." He said, "Emma, you do not understand. Whatever you think you know, it is not what it looks like." I said, "I know about the hotel receipts. I know about the transfers. I know about the account you and Serena share. I know about the $40,000. The way he looked at me when I said Serena's name is something I will never forget. It was the look of a man who had just realized the floor he was standing on was not solid. He said, "How do you know that name?" I said, "I have known for a while." He went quiet. Then he tried a different approach. He sat down. He changed his voice to something softer. He said, "Emma, I am sorry. I made a mistake. We can fix this. We have too much together to throw it away over something I genuinely regret." I looked at him. I thought about my grandmother sitting in her kitchen, handing me an envelope, saying, "This money is for you." I thought about every late night I had made dinner and covered it and gone to bed alone. I thought about the notebook in my car and the folder and the forensic accounting records and Marcus sitting across from me in that coffee shop with exhausted eyes. I said, "I am not throwing anything away. I am simply done holding something that was never really mine to hold." He stayed in the house for a few days while arrangements were made. We did not fight, we barely spoke. He tried once more to appeal to me. In the middle of a quiet Tuesday evening, he said that Serena had meant nothing, that it was over, that he had been going through something and had handled it badly. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I said, "I hope you find clarity, but my decision is made." He moved out by the end of the week. Here is where the story takes another turn, because Daniel was not the only person affected by what Marcus and I had uncovered. When Serena learned that Marcus had copies of everything, the account records, the transaction history, the message threads, the hotel bookings, the evidence of the shared financial arrangement, she did not go quietly. She called Marcus in a rage. She called him manipulative and controlling. She told him he had violated her privacy. She even messaged me once, from a number I did not recognize, telling me that I had broken up a good thing, that Daniel had been unhappy for years, that I should be ashamed of myself. I read that message twice. I forwarded it to Patricia with a note attached. For the record, Serena's rage, as it turned out, was partly driven by fear. Because Marcus had filed for divorce at the same time Patricia had filed for mine, and the forensic accounting was now part of both proceedings. Serena had been hiding money too. Specifically, she had been understating her income in ways that affected their joint tax filings. Marcus's accountant had flagged it. It had been added to his filing. When that piece of information became part of the legal record, Serena's tone changed completely. The angry messages stopped. The blame disappeared. There was silence from her side that told its own story. The divorce proceedings took several months. Daniel had a lawyer, of course. His lawyer made arguments. He contested some of the characterizations in Patricia's filing. He tried to claim that certain transfers were legitimate household expenses and that there was no direct evidence of intent to defraud. Patricia was not moved. She had the forensic accounting. She had Marcus's corroborating records. She had my 6 weeks of careful documentation. She had the timeline that showed the pattern, the transfers, the cash withdrawals, the dates that matched the hotel receipts. The dissipation of marital assets argument stood. In the final settlement, I was awarded a portion of those dissipated funds as compensation. The exact number is private, but it was meaningful. Combined with the protection of my inherited savings, which had never been touched because I had kept them in a separate account exactly as my grandmother had asked, I came out of the process financially whole. more than whole. Daniel received a settlement that reflected both what he had contributed to the marriage and what he had taken from it. He did not contest it in the end. I think some part of him was relieved to be done. And maybe some part of him knew that what he had done was exactly as bad as the paperwork said it was. I moved into a small apartment that autumn. It was the first place that was entirely mine. My name on the lease, my furniture, my quiet. I stood in the middle of the empty living room on the first day, and I just breathed. I did not need it to be anything more than what it was. It was mine, and it was clean, and it was the beginning of something I had not yet fully imagined. My mother came to help me move in. She brought a plant for the windowsill and a set of kitchen towels she had embroidered with small yellow flowers. She helped me arrange the furniture, and then we sat on the floor and ate takeout because the table was not assembled yet. She did not bring up Daniel once. We talked about the plant, and which window got the best light, and whether I should paint the bathroom. That evening, after she left, I sat by the window with a glass of wine and I thought about my grandmother. I thought about her hands when she handed me that envelope. I thought about how she said for you with such quiet certainty, like she already knew there would come a moment when I would need it to be protected. I think she did know. I think she had seen enough of the world to understand that love is not always the safeguard we hope it will be, and that sometimes the most loving thing an older woman can do for a younger one is make sure she has a floor beneath her feet that no one else controls. I kept that promise, Grandma. I kept it. Several months after the divorce was finalized, Marcus and I crossed paths again. We had stayed in occasional contact throughout the proceedings, a professional courtesy more than anything, passing information to our respective lawyers through the proper channels and occasionally updating each other on the timeline. He had handled everything with the same quiet thoroughness he had shown from the beginning. We met for coffee. He looked different, less exhausted. He had the look of a man who had put something down that had been very heavy. We talked for a long time, not about Daniel or Serena. About what comes next. About what you do when the story you thought was your life turns out to have been only a chapter. Marcus said something that stayed with me. He said, I spent a long time being angry, and then I spent a long time being sad. And then one morning I woke up and I realized I was neither of those things anymore. I was just awake, and awake was enough. I understood exactly what he meant. There's a postscript to this story that I feel I should share, because it is the kind of thing that only happens in real life and would seem too convenient in fiction. About 4 months after my divorce was finalized, I received a voicemail from Daniel's mother. This was a woman I had known for 10 years. She had been warm to me throughout the marriage. She had called me on my birthdays and sent cards at Christmas. When everything fell apart, she had gone silent, which I understood. She was his mother. Her loyalty was where it had to be. The voicemail said that she was sorry, not for Daniel, not explaining him, not asking me to reconsider anything, just sorry. She said she had not known the extent of things until recently and that she wanted me to know she was sorry for what I had been put through. I listened to that voicemail 3 times, then I called her back. We talked for about 20 minutes. She cried a little. I did not. We said goodbye at the end in a way that felt like a door closing gently rather than slamming. I saved that voicemail. Not out of bitterness, out of recognition, because it was proof that the truth, when it finally settles, changes things for everyone involved. Not always dramatically, sometimes just quietly, sometimes just in a 20-minute phone call between 2 people who both loved someone who did not love them back the way they deserved. I am 36 years old. I live alone in a small apartment with good light and a plant on the windowsill that is doing very well. I work the same job I have always worked, sitting at a desk reviewing documents to make sure numbers go where they are supposed to go. I am good at my job. I always have been. I think about my grandmother often. I think about what she knew and how she knew it. I think about the way quiet wisdom moves through generations of women like water through rock, slowly, patiently, and in the end, inevitably. She told me the money was for my security. She was right. But it was not just the money. It was the lesson behind it. The lesson that what belongs to you must be protected. That patience is not the same as passivity, that you can love someone fully and still see them clearly, that the moment you stop begging someone to see your worth is the moment you begin to understand it yourself. I am not angry at Daniel anymore. I am also not grateful to him. He is simply someone who was part of a chapter that is now closed.